There is a psychology experiment that has been referenced in boardrooms, classrooms, and research labs for decades. And the reason it keeps coming up is because of what it reveals about the way the human mind actually works. In the experiment, a group of people are given a problem to solve. They are given tools, options, and a clear path forward. Most of them solve it quickly. They reach for the obvious answer, use the most familiar tool, and move on. But then researchers remove that obvious tool. They take away the easiest option, and something unexpected begins to happen. People who seemed average suddenly become creative. People who had one solution suddenly discover five. The mind, when forced away from comfort, does not collapse. It expands. And what researchers found was that the most inventive, most elegant, and most satisfying solutions almost never appeared when the easy path was available. They only appeared when it was taken away. Now, here is the part most people never see coming. That same psychological principle, the one that unlocks hidden creativity when the obvious option is removed, applies directly to sex. And if that connection feels strange right now, stay with it for the next few minutes because by the end of this video, something about the way you think about sexual experience is going to shift permanently. Most men grow up with one definition of sex. It is so deeply embedded that they rarely even question it. Penetration equals sex. That is the beginning, middle, and end of the story. It is what movies suggest, what conversations imply, and what most men have accepted as the whole picture. And on the surface, that belief seems harmless. Penetration can feel good. It can create closeness. It can be meaningful. But when it becomes the only definition of what sex is, something quietly starts to go wrong. The experience shrinks, the connection narrows, and most men spend years inside a box they do not even realize they are living in. This video is about what happens when you remove that obvious option, even just for one night, even just as an experiment. Because what waits on the other side of that decision is not less pleasure. It is more. Not a weaker connection, a deeper one, and not a lesser version of sex. In many cases, an experience that is more powerful than anything penetration alone has ever produced. My name is Magda Kay, and every week on this channel, the focus is on helping men build deeper emotional bonds with women, understand the psychology of intimacy, and create sexual experiences that genuinely mean something. If that kind of content speaks to you, subscribing now means you will not miss what is coming next because the insight at the end of this video is one that most men never encounter. Now back to the experiment. Imagine being told you are going to have sex tonight, but with one rule. Penetration is off the table entirely. Just sit with that for a moment. Notice what happens in your mind. For many men, the first reaction is confusion, then maybe frustration. Because if penetration is removed, what is left? And that reaction, that moment of not knowing what comes next, is exactly where this becomes interesting. Because the answer to that question, what is left, reveals just how much has been missed. What is left is everything, the entire landscape of the human body, every nerve ending, every reaction, every texture, every breath. What is left is time. Because without a finish line, there is no rush. What is left is presence, because without an end goal, the only thing that matters is what is happening right now. And what is left is connection, real, unhurried, electric connection, the kind that most couples quietly stop experiencing after the first few months of a relationship and spend years wondering where it went. The first thing that happens when penetration is removed is that everything slows down. And slowing down is not as simple as it sounds because most men have been unconsciously trained to accelerate. Move faster, do more, get to the point. That rhythm is so familiar it becomes automatic. But when the goal is removed, the rush disappears with it. And in that space of no rush, something remarkable becomes possible. The body becomes something to explore rather than something to move toward. Her body becomes something to understand rather than something to use. And that shift, from using to understanding, is where intimacy actually lives. Think about what happens when a man touches a woman without expectation. Not to signal what comes next, not as a step in a sequence leading somewhere else. Just touch, present, and unhurried. Her skin reacts differently. Her breathing shifts. The tension in her body, the kind that most women carry without even realizing it, begins to release. And as it releases, something else opens up, a different kind of receptivity, a different quality of presence. Women who have experienced this describe it as feeling genuinely seen, which is a phrase that might sound abstract until you understand the psychology underneath it. Women's sexual experience is fundamentally different from men's in one critical way. For most men, arousal is primarily physical. The body responds and the mind follows. But for most women, the sequence runs in the opposite direction. The mind opens first. Emotional safety arrives first. Genuine connection is felt first. And only then does the body fully respond. This is not a theory or a stereotype. It is one of the most consistent findings in the psychology of human sexuality, and it explains something important about why so many relationships quietly lose their spark over time. When sex becomes goal oriented, when penetration is always the destination, the emotional dimension of the experience starts to disappear. It does not disappear dramatically. There is no single moment where a woman decides she is no longer interested. It happens gradually, quietly, one transaction at a time. Sex starts to feel like a task to complete rather than an experience to share. And when it feels like a task, desire naturally fades. Not because attraction is gone, not because love has disappeared, but because the thing that ignites desire in most women, the feeling of being truly present with someone who is genuinely interested in her experience, has been replaced with a routine. Removing penetration, even once, even just as an experiment, breaks that routine at its foundation. Because it makes the experience impossible to rush. It removes the transaction. It forces presence. And when presence returns, something that many couples thought they had permanently lost begins to come back. Now, here's where the exploration itself becomes its own world. Because once the pressure of penetration is gone and the body is approached with genuine curiosity, what gets discovered is often surprising. There are areas of her body that respond in ways neither partner expected. The back of the neck, the inside of the elbow, the space just below the ear, the small of the back. Zones that carry sensitivity that never gets activated when the experience is always moving toward the same predictable conclusion. And there are places on your own body that carry sensation you have never paid attention to, not because they are not there, but because the script of traditional sex never allowed time to notice them. This kind of exploration does something to the dynamic between two people. It creates discovery. And discovery creates excitement in a way that familiarity never can. When two people have been together for years and intimacy starts to feel like going through the motions, it is almost never because they have lost attraction. It is because there is no more discovery. Everything feels known, everything is predictable. And the human mind, by design, loses interest in what it has already fully mapped. Remove penetration, and the map disappears. Everything becomes unknown again. And suddenly the experience carries the electricity of something new, even between two people who have shared a bed for a decade. Now take this further. The experience does not have to remain in the dimension of touch alone. This is where something genuinely extraordinary becomes possible, because the human body does not process pleasure through one sense in isolation. It processes it through all of them simultaneously. And when multiple senses are deliberately engaged at once, the intensity of what gets felt multiplies in ways that are difficult to describe, but immediately recognizable once experienced. Start with texture. The skin is incredibly sensitive to contrast. Something soft and slow, the edge of a feather, a piece of silk drawn lightly across the arm, a piece of velvet pressed gently against the back, produces a reaction that is completely different from anything pressure or speed creates. The nervous system responds to light sensation with a kind of heightened attention. Every nerve becomes more aware, and that awareness creates a sensitivity that makes everything that follows feel amplified. Then bring in taste. Something sweet, something playful, something that makes the experience feel more like an adventure and less like a performance. This is not complicated. It does not require elaborate preparation, but it introduces an element of genuine playfulness that most adult sexual experiences have long since lost. And playfulness matters more than most people realize because, Laughter and lightness create safety, and safety is what allows a woman to fully let go of the control she maintains in almost every other area of her life. Then consider smell. A warm oil massage, chosen for its fragrance as much as its sensation, fills the air with something that registers in the oldest part of the brain. Scent bypasses rational thought entirely. It connects directly to memory and emotion in a way that no other sense does. Add the warmth of the oil, the slow, intentional movement of hands across the body, and the combination becomes something that exists in a completely different category from what most people think of as foreplay. This is not preparation for something else. This is the experience itself. And when all of this comes together simultaneously, when touch and taste and scent and texture and emotional presence are all operating at once, something that most people have never encountered becomes possible. It is sometimes called a full body energetic orgasm. And the reason most women have never experienced it is not because they are incapable of it. It is because the conditions required for it are almost never created. This kind of experience does not arise from pressure or speed or physical intensity. It arises from deep relaxation, from the complete absence of performance anxiety, from a body that has been given enough time and enough presence to fully release every layer of tension it has been holding. And this is precisely the environment that sex without penetration creates. There is no performance pressure because there is no performance. There is no rush because there is no finish line. There is nothing to prove and nothing to achieve. There is only presence, sensation, and genuine exploration. And in that environment, the body is capable of responses that most people spend their entire lives never discovering. Here is something that surprises many men when they first hear it. That kind of experience is not exclusive to women. Men can also access a form of full body pleasure that does not require an erection or direct genital stimulation, but it only becomes available when the relentless focus on physical performance is released. When a man stops performing and starts feeling, when the body is allowed to receive as openly as it gives, something shifts in the experience of pleasure itself. It becomes less localized, less mechanical, and more total, more present in the whole body rather than concentrated in a single place. Couples who explore this territory together describe a specific change in how they feel about each other. They talk about feeling closer. They talk about knowing each other in a way that they did not before. They use words like deeper and slower and more real. Not because non penetrative intimacy replaced something they valued, but because it revealed something they had never found access to. And once that access exists, it changes the whole relationship. Not just the sexual dimension, the emotional tone of everything. The question that naturally arises at this point is whether this means penetration has no value. And the answer is no. Penetration is not the problem. The problem is penetration as the only option, as the only definition, as the ceiling of what sex is allowed to be. Because when that ceiling exists, everything above it remains invisible. All the territory of deeper pleasure, longer experience, more varied sensation, and genuine emotional intimacy stays undiscovered. Not because it was not available, but because the narrow definition of sex never allowed room to look for it. Remove the ceiling, even temporarily, even just to see what is there, and the space that opens up is genuinely unexpected. Most men who try this once and approach it with real presence and real curiosity report that it changes not just how they think about that single experience, but how they think about intimacy as a whole. The women they are with often feel something shift as well. The experience of being with a man who is genuinely curious about her pleasure, who is not rushing toward his own release, who is paying attention to her responses and adjusting with care, is something that most women rarely experience. And when a woman feels that, she does not forget it. It rewires what she associates with being with that person. Connection, safety, and desire all deepen at once. And this is the deeper truth underneath everything that has been shared here. Sex is not just physical. It was never just physical. It is one of the most emotionally loaded experiences two human beings can share. And when it is approached only as a physical act with a single physical goal, most of its meaning disappears. What remains is a transaction. And transactions feel good in the moment, but they never build anything that lasts. What builds something lasting is the willingness to slow down, to explore without agenda, to be fully present with another person and let that presence be enough, to discover that there is far more to pleasure than any single definition of it allows for, and to understand that the most powerful sexual experiences most people will ever have are not the ones that follow the familiar script. They are the ones that happen when the script is put down entirely. So here's the invitation: not to abandon what has worked before, not to permanently restructure how intimacy functions, just to try, once with full presence and genuine curiosity, what happens when the most obvious option is removed. Because what the psychology experiment revealed in the lab is the same thing that happens in the bedroom. When the easy answer disappears, the real answers appear. When the obvious path is closed, the extraordinary path becomes visible. And what waits on that path is something most men have been standing right next to their entire lives without ever knowing it was there. That is how powerful sex without penetration can be. And that is only the beginning of what becomes possible when the definition of intimacy is genuinely expanded. But here's the part that changes everything even further. There is one more insight, one more shift in understanding that has the potential to transform an entire sexual and emotional relationship almost instantly. Not over weeks or months of practice, almost immediately. And it does not require any special skill or technique. It only requires understanding one specific thing about the way desire actually works. That insight is in the next video, and if everything shared here resonated, that one is something you will not want to miss.